Lesson 23: Building a user login and hashing passwords. In Lesson 22, you added flash messages to your controller actions and views. In this lesson, you dive deeper into the user model by creating a sign-up and login form. Then you add a layer of security to your application by hashing users' passwords and saving your users' login state. Next, you add some more validations at the controller level with the help of Express Validator package. By the end of this lesson, the user should be able to create an account, have their password saved securely in your database, and log in or log out as they like. This lesson covers creating a user login form, hashing data in your database with bcrypt. Before you dive into the logic that will handle users logging into a specific application, establish what their sign-up and login forms will look like. The sign-up form will look and behave like the form in new.ejs. Because most users will create their own accounts through the sign-up form, you'll refer to the create view and create action for the new user registrations. The form you need but don't have yet is the user login form. This form takes two inputs, email and password. First, create a basic user login view and connect it with a new route and controller actions. Then create a new login.ejs view in your users folder with the code from the next listing. Notice the important addition here, the users / login action in the form tag. You need to create a route to handle post request to the path. So our login form takes the action of users / login. So when a user logs in, it takes them to / login with the method post. We have our login, which should be where the users will log in with their email and their password, and then we have a submit button, that is the login button, where the user will post their information to log in. Next, add the login route by adding the code in listing 23.22 main.js. The first route allows you to see the login form when a GET request is made to the user's login path. The second route handles post request to the same path. In this case, you route the request to the authenticate action, followed by the redirect action to load a page. So the login route, it starts with the GET request, where it will go to users controller login, where the route is user / login. So it goes to users controller login. So when there's a GET request, it will render this page, the login page, so which is the user's login. And then with the post, it will go to users / login, and then it would authenticate, and then after authenticating, it will redirect to whatever page that it is told to redirect to. Create the necessary controller actions in your user's controller to get the login form working. Add the code from listing 23.3 to users controller.js. The login action renders the login view for user login. The authenticate action finds one user with a matching email address. Because this attribute is unique in the database, it should find that single user or no user at all. Then the form password is compared with that database password and redirected to the user's show page if the passwords match. As in previous actions, set the rest locals redirect variable to the path that to the path that the redirect view action will handle for you. So also set messages to let the user know they've logged in successfully, and pass the user object as a local variable to the user's show page. By calling next here, you invoke the next middleware function, which is redirect view. If no user is found but no error occurred in the search for a user, set an error flash message and set the redirect path to take the user back to the login form to try again. If an error occurs, log it to the console and pass the error in the next middleware function that handles the error. So when the user logs in, it will render this page. It will render the login page under the users folder, and then after the user punches in their email and password, it will be through the request response and next. So what it will do, it will find that one email that matches the email that the user punched in, and then if there's a user, it will compare the password that the user punched in and the password that is saved in the database. If the passwords match, it will redirect the user through the user ID, and then it will flash the message success. Whatever username's name and surname is logged in successfully. If not, it will give an error, failed to log in user account, incorrect password. So that's if the user has punched in the wrong password and doesn't match. Once it flashes the error message, it will redirect the user back to users/login for them to try and punch in the password again. Oh, there we go. And then if there's an error where it doesn't find the user, it will console log error logging in user, and then it will give the error message. Okay. Hashing passwords. Encryption is the process of combining some unique key or passphrase with sensitive data to produce a value that represents the original data but is otherwise useless. The process includes hashing data, the original value of which can be retrieved with a private key used for the hashing function. The hashed value is stored in the database instead of the sensitive data. When you want to encrypt new data, pass the data through the encryption algorithm. When you want to retrieve that data compared with say a user's input password, the application can use the same unique key and algorithm to decrypt the data. Bcrypt is a sophisticated hashing function that allows you to combine certain unique keys in application to store data such as passwords in your database. Fortunately, you can use a few Node.js packages to implement bcrypt hashing. The Mongo's pre and post hooks are great ways to run some code on the user's instance before and after the user is saved to the database. Attach the hook to the user schema, which, like other middleware, takes next as a parameter. The bcrypt.hash method takes a password and a number. The number represents the level of complexity against which you'd like to hash your password, and 10 is generally accepted as a reliable number. When the hashing of the password is complete, the next part of the promise chain accepts the resulting hash. Assign the user's password to this hash and call next, which saves the user to the database. If any error occurred, they will be logged and passed to the next middleware. So this pre-hook, the user schema.prehook save, what it does, it says let user this, so it takes this user, and then with the method bcrypt.hash, it takes that user password with the intensity of 10, and then it hashes that user password, and it calls the next function. If there's the next function, which is the catch error, if the user password cannot be hashed, it will console log the message error in in hashing password. Okay. The final step is rewriting the authenticate actions in user controller to compare passwords with bcrypt.compare. Replace the code block for the authenticate action with the code listing in 23.5. First, explicitly query for one user by email. If a user is found, assign the result to user. Then check whether a user was found or null is returned. If a user with a specified email address is found, call your custom password comparison method on the user instance, passing the form's input password as an argument. Because password comparison returns a promise that results with a true or false, nest another then to wait for a result. If password matches true, redirect to the user's show page. If a user with a specified email doesn't exist or the input password is incorrect, return to the login screen. Otherwise, throw an error and pass it in your next object. Any errors thrown occurring during this process are caught and logged. So with this authenticate, we have a query where we'll find one user with that email that the user is punching in. If then the user is found, it will save that user here, and then with user.password comparison, it will compare the password that the user has punched in and uh, the password that is saved. So if the passwords match, it will redirect the user to / users with the user ID, and then it will not flag, it will flash success. The user's full name is logged in successfully, where everything is saved in the request object. And then if there's an incorrect password, it will flash the error field to log in user, and then incorrect password, and then it will redirect the user back to users / login. And if there's another error where the user cannot be found, it will call the next function, the next middleware, and then it will flash the error field to log in user account not found, and then it will also redirect the user back to log in. Relaunch your Node.js application and create a new user. You will need to create a new accounts moving forward because previous accounts passwords weren't securely hashed with bcrypt. Okay. So let's add. So as you can see, the password for our user has been hashed. Adding validation middleware with Express Validator. So far, your application offers validation at the view and model levels. If you try to create a user account without an email address, your HTML forms should prevent you from doing so. If you get around the forms, or if someone tries to create an account via your API, as you see in Unit 6, your model schema restrictions should prevent invalid data from entering your database. For those reasons, you validate middleware, and it's true of most common needs in Node.js. Some packages are available to help you build those middleware functions. The package you will install is Express Validator, which provides a library of methods you can use to check whether incoming data follows a certain format, and methods that modify that data to remove unwanted characters. So this is the route for the validate middleware, where after the create, it will go to users controller, it will validate, it will create, and then it will validate whether everything that the user is supposed to put in is correct, and then it will create their user, and then it will redirect the user to the specified uh, path. Finally, create the validate action in user controller just to handle requests before they reach their create action. In this action, add the following validators. Check whether incoming data meets certain criteria. Sanitizers, modifying incoming data by removing unwanted elements or casting the data type before it enters the database. Add code listing 23.7 to users controller JS. The first validation function uses the request and response, and it may pass on to the next function in the middleware chain, so you need the next parameter. Start with the sanitization of the email field using Express Validator normalize email method to convert all email addresses to lowercase and then trim white space away. Follow the validation of email to make sure that it follows the email format requirements set by Express Validator. The zip code validation ensures that the value is an empty and is an integer, and that the length is exactly 5 digits. The last validation checks that the password field is an empty. Request get validation result collects the results of the previous validations and returns a promise with those error results. If error occurs, you can collect the error messages and add them to your request flash messages. Here you're joining a series of messages with and in one long string. If errors have occurred in the validations set, request skip equals to true. Here set is the new custom property you're adding to the request object. This value tells your next middleware function create not to process your user data because of validation errors, and instead to skip to your redirect view. So with our validate, it has a request and response and a next. So we start by sanitizing our email and making sure that the email that is entered follows the correct email structure. We set all lowercase to true so that even if the user punches the email in capital letters, it will be converted to lowercase. And then through the request check, we'll check if there's an email, if the email is correct, and to check if that is the email. And then it does the same with the zip code. It checks the zip code and it makes sure that the zip code is not empty. It is an integer and its length the maximum length is 5, and the maximum is also 5 digits. So after doing those validations, it saves we get the validation results, and then if there's an error, like if there's an error, it will flash the error message and redirect the user to /users/new. So it will probably be that there's no user there, so it requires the user to create a profile or an account. So in summary, in this lesson you implemented a hashing function for your users' passwords. Then you created a login form and action by using the bcrypt compare method to match hashed passwords against user input on login. At the end, you added more validations on input data through an additional middleware function to sanitize data before it's saved to your database. In Lesson 24, you take another look at encryption and authentication through Passport.js tools, which makes setting up secure user accounts much easier.